Hello, Markus. Good morning.
Hello, Ashkan.
Nice to see you again.
I enjoy our conversations very much.
Me too. Yeah. Hmm. So I thought uh, for today, I'd like to talk with you about a basic emotion that we experience, and that's the emotion of shame. And the idea came to me as we were talking last time, and we were talking about going back to our essence. And in our essence, we are all connected in some ways. But in experiencing shame, we sort of lose connection with ourselves. And the sense of connection with others is also threatened. And we doubt if we are acceptable or we are accepted. And we don't feel intimate with others. So I thought maybe this is something that can be looked at in this phenomenological view presented.
I'm interested in the qualities of being and all of the subtleties of awareness that we can have around something so general like shame. The expressive arts give us a way to work with, for example, metaphor, so that the naming of the quality of shame is specific to that person at that moment around that situation. So working on issues having to do with shame in general becomes something quite intimate in the process of getting a kind of a felt sense, an embodied sense of what's occurring bodily, emotionally, things that move in the brain when a person is in what they're calling shame. So I would work with someone to say, can you perhaps give me some metaphor so I can have a sense of specifically what shame is for you right now? And they may say it's like tenderness in a box. I keep my tenderness in a box. So that's such a gift. Then we have something to work with, and maybe for months. What is the box like? We can do work with the body. We can do work with paintings, even poetry. My tenderness is in a box is an interesting first line for a poem. So we're working with the resources of the person's capacity to be creative in how they're being with this thing that initially was just sort of this generic naming of shame.
Yeah. And I guess in experiencing shame, we sometimes like to hide ourselves. And there is something, it can be a quality that's related to us, or it can be me in general, that do not feel like being expressed. I don't want to express because I'm bad or because I'm not good. But what you're describing is that we find some ways that this can be expressed throughout arts, right?
Yes, and Ashkan, this distinction between expressing and communicating becomes very important. In communication, you're sensing whether or not what you're saying is landing in the other. So in the expressive arts therapy process, I am initially less concerned with the person communicating to me about what their concerns are, and really focused on, because there's an element of translating what's actually occurring. So what precedes the need to communicate to the therapist is the actual movement of what's going on, and wanting to just stay with what's moving in them or not moving in them, and to see if they can find a language, again, whether it's words, music, movement, colors, find a language for being with that movement and giving it expression, serving its movement, giving it, participating with the expression of it. And then perhaps we can kind of harvest that expression and reflect on it as a way to give the client the opportunity to communicate from the art. Maybe the art will speak. Maybe the painting will say, I am hidden for a reason. And the person might say, yeah. So we don't start with asking the client to communicate what their problem is, but rather to explore, and sort of innocently explore, and to discover, well, what is that like inside of me that I'm calling shame? So when a person expresses, they don't need anybody in the room. You can express your shame, your tenderness, whatever's going on in art making with no one there, just to learn a little bit more about what is this? And then you get to choose. Now, do I want to work with this to communicate it to others about what's going on in me? So it's this two-step process becomes essential in this expressive arts therapy work. First to explore, and then to see if you can name what you've discovered.
So I understand that it can be expressed alone, but I'm interested in the two-person process of therapy that makes it different. And when it's expressed, it might be also transformed into that co-creativity of the relationship between therapist and the client. And it makes it so different.
Well, people speak a lot now about therapy being relational.
Yeah.
When I'm with a client, it's firstly their relationship with themselves. And we can be together, or the person can experience being alone together. That I kind of back up and give them some studio time to explore something. And then they come back to me, and we together explore what's there, and what I was saying, harvesting and reflecting, to see if they can name and create some clarity about what they're discovering. So when I say alone, I don't necessarily mean separate. I mean in the solitude of their challenge, in the solitude of the difficulty, in the solitude of the exploration, while they're there in the therapeutic frame. When I step back, and then I step in and say, okay, let's can we open this up a little bit? Let's see if we can harvest it. What's the fruit of the work that you just did?
Yeah.
Of course, the relationship with the client is also extremely important, but in a way, I sense it as being secondary. The primary is that I create a safe frame for them to be with me, much like how they would be when they were alone. To sort of drop into a more vertical connection with all the different layers of them and all the different areas. And then at the just right time in the process, for it to become more horizontal. and they're connecting with me after establishing that vertical connection with all the layers of themselves. Otherwise, if we start with an emphasis on the horizontal connection, it might be a little bit more presentational. We're talking about, rather than dropping into that phenomenon of exploring. And then later, after that, looking at perhaps something that can be named as a discovery. And this can happen pretty fast. A lot can happen in a 1-hour session. Quite a bit in my experience.
Wow. Would you say a bit more about what makes it more presentational rather than vertical exploration of self?
Yeah. Well, some people say expressive arts therapy is not talk therapy, but I don't agree with that at all. We need to be able to talk. It's just not the only way. And we have a lot of habits in how we speak to people. You know, our accustomed way of relating. And we sometimes, if we're talking about what's going on with us, we're kind of in our old stories, you know. People have said to me, you know, I've been in all kinds of therapy and nothing's worked, and I heard about what you do, so I thought I'd try it. Because there's something about the manner with which we hold something changes it. You know, that's Einstein. So what I'm interested in is how can the client hold what they're struggling with in a new way. And I find that sometimes if we start with talking about, they tend to be in old patterns of how they talk about their struggles. So I want to sort of, what would happen if you kind of moved into this place of entering the mystery of the question, what is this? And what is it like? Especially when I say, well, if it's shame, can you be a little more specific? Maybe, does it have a color? Does it have a movement? Does it have a sound? And then they're discovering, as I'm discovering what's going on together, we're co-creating this frame for wonder about what is this? What is this? What is this?
Yeah, I get it now.
Yeah. It's literally reframing and renaming the question. So rather than saying, you know, why am I so ashamed and da, 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 I might say, I'm wondering if we can find a different question as a way to stay with this in a more embodied way, in a more moment-specific way. Right now, if the shame could speak, what would it say? I am heavy. So, okay, let's work with the heaviness. Maybe have them get up on their feet. Show me, what kind of heavy? Is it like you're carrying something heavy? Is it heavy on your shoulders? Are your feet heavy? My belly, it's like my belly is heavy. Oh, I'm gonna throw up. I just have all this in my belly. We have something to work with.
Yeah. So that reframe is throughout the process of accessing what's inside, connecting with what's inside, and understanding the experience. So the reframe is happening simultaneously as you're exploring. It's not a step-by-step process that's first this, then this, then this. So
Right. It's an unfolding of the exploration. And the word exploring is very important to me as part of the phenomenological approach to expressive arts, the phenomenological body-centered approach to psychotherapy. Exploring any ing word, so many ing words are important to stay in this you brought up the word intimacy earlier, the sort of this intimate tracking of how to enter this space of difficulty.
Mm.
And it's my job to create a safe frame for that kind of vulnerability that can be happening as a person in front of someone else is inviting such profound tenderness sometimes.
Mm.
And so phenomenologically, this question, what are you noticing? You know, not necessarily what are you feeling.
Mm.
Because sometimes a client, they don't know what they're feeling. Or, you know, what are your thoughts? I have it more open. I say, what are you noticing? Because they might say, I noticed that there's tension in my jaw.
Yeah.
And that's enough. And just by bringing awareness to the jaw, they might say, wow, I've been telling myself to shut up for years because I don't want to embarrass myself
Mm.
by
Mm.
talking about my feelings. And that might bring some tears or body-centered way of staying with this question. What are you noticing?
Yeah.
Noticing. And you know, it's our job to set a frame that where that's such an intimate question is acceptable to the client to stay in that place of intimate inquiry.
Mm. So that's where I guess intimacy of between also mirrors in intimacy of within.
I would be very dishonest if I didn't mention the word love.
Mm.
I like where I'm coming from because where I'm coming from is a place of love. That combination in just being with the client of liking coming from my heart and actually believing that they can trust where I'm coming from. I almost never know where we're going, but I have a sense of where I'm coming from, and I'd love the client to sort of sense the goodness of where I'm coming from and resonate with that. And sometimes that awakens those deeper places and where they're coming from so that we can truly meet from those deeper places in the heart where I sense where our wisdom lies. The
Mm.
role of the intellect for me, I love using my intellect. I've always been interested in the right use of intellect. For me, the role of the intellect within the therapeutic frame is to think about and create clarity about what you know in your heart is true. If I'm working with a 13-year-old who is so suicidal and says, I feel worthless, I'll acknowledge that must feel awful. And do you know that that's true? Do you know in your heart that that's true? And maybe they'll cry. Maybe they won't be able to say it, but I'll see they'll have a shift that they don't actually know that that's true. It's just a feeling. They don't know that.
Mm.
So speaking, you know, on that heart level to someone who's struggling, they can sense where you're coming from. And I speak of that as establishing resonance, that you establish resonance with the client before anything else, before anything else. And that's the intimacy. It's not talked a lot about, you know, in training to be a psychotherapist. Some schools more than others, but making that heart connection where the client's wisdom lies and where our wisdom lies, and to meet heart to heart. A third of the heart are brain cells.
Mm.
And, you know, neural cells. A third of the heart are neural cells. So when you put your hand on your heart and say, wow, I really need to give that some thought, that's real.
Mm, mm. I guess I got my answers for today.
Yeah, I mean, the lovely thing about our conversations for me is I love creating clarity. I mean, I love art making, uh, but I didn't stay just an artist. You know, I am a musician and I love to paint and write.
Mm,
Uh, but right there, along with liking the arts and being creative, is liking creating clarity. So our time together for me is it's one of the great loves of my life to come together with others with the intention of kindly and intelligently opening up the possibility of together creating clarity about something. So you brought up the topic of shame. And I experienced that as a beautiful invitation for together to just sit as, you know, it'd be lovely to explore this phenomenon of shame and what is it. And you know, so this just feels like the beginning of something that could be, you know, quite a long conversation about how to respect someone's feelings deeply and say, and what do you know that's deeper about you, that's deeper than these feelings of shame? Can we go to something quieter, something that precedes the shame? How can we go to that place of innocence or openness that can kindly and intelligently hold the shame with dearness and intelligence? So our time together has, for me, has that quality of holding difficult phenomena like shame. How do we hold that with profound love and respect and kindness?
yeah,
And yeah, I'm so glad that uh, you're going to be moving into this work.
yeah. And if I want to add something to this, is that besides experiencing all of these that you explained, I also enjoy the spontaneity in these conversations. Uh, this is one of the things I'm doing without any preparation. The only thing maybe I have before this conversation is just one word, like this shame. And we don't prepare anything before that. And I enjoy it very much.
Yes, it has the quality of art making. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in just making art in the therapeutic frame. And I ask, how can being creative within the therapeutic process affect our ability to be spontaneous and playful in our everyday lives? And
Exactly.
yeah, so
Yeah. So I appreciate it.
yes,
Until next time.
yes. See you soon.
See you.